The Arizona Wildcats get back on the board in the NBA draft. That and the future of players for the U of A and the NBA draft here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, we have got a lot to get to this show. We are going to go heavy with the NBA draft. We are not like ASU. We have a lot of players in the NBA draft and want to talk about that. But first, Pelle Larsson picked by the Miami Heat with the 44th pick in the draft. All right, now, Pelle Larsson, what do we think about Pelle Larsson and what he is able to do for the University of Arizona, or for the Miami Heat, actually? My dog is barking at me. Now, the first thing that I think we need to talk about is I was wrong on Pelle. As you all know, I was wrong. I did not see Pelle Larsson becoming an NBA player. He was drafted and he is going to, I think they think that there's a really good chance that he is going to be a 3-and-D player. And if he can do that, I would be really wrong on that. Now, a big thing about it, I think, with Pelle is, is he going to be a good enough shooter to be able to make this happen? And if he can become a good enough shooter, listen, I know that the percentages are very good. I get all of that, but there were just way too many times where it just didn't feel like he was somebody that hunted open shots. And in the NBA, as a 3-and-D player, you got to be able to hunt open shots. That is a huge part of it. For example, Pelle was the guy that if he missed a three-pointer and the ball came right back to him and he was wide open, he would pass it up. You got to be able to take that again, and you got to be able to take that with confidence. Defensively, he measures in at about 6'5" or 6'6", and he's got fairly, he's pretty strong, and he's not afraid to be able to kind of put his head in there and get dirty a little bit, get tussled. But so you do see a template for him to be able to succeed there. Now, will he be able to do it? I don't know. I'm still not convinced, but like I said, take it for what it's worth. I've been wrong on Pelle before. Maybe that template is kind of a Max Strus type, and if he can become Max Strus, then obviously that is a huge win for everybody. Keep in mind too, the Miami Heat have obviously done a very, very good job. A very, very good job with, developing NBA players and, finding guys in that second round. They've been able to do that. You look at it from undrafted free agents to players that, were second round picks to late first that not a lot of people saw it. I mean, look at Jaime Jaquez last year. He was probably one of the top 5 rookies in the entire NBA, and they got him later in the first round. You also look at some of the guys they've gotten as undrafted free agents or kind of, last second, bargain basement types. And that's been dudes like a Caleb Martin. That's been guys like up front, you've had players as well. Max Strus, we just mentioned. So they've had a history of being able to do this. And if Pat Riley is into you, then it's probably a pretty good thing for the future of your basketball journey. We'll see what happens with Pelle. Like I said, I think he certainly proved me wrong, and I think he proved some other people wrong. We'll see how far he can really take this one. It's going to be interesting though, but big shout outs to him. Miami Heat, they obviously have some spots open. They got some players that, I think can look at and say, all right, that's a spot where, he can play. And I think we'll find out if that's really the case. But so far, so good. And Pelle obviously killed it in those workouts. He looked really, really good. And I think that's kind of where you look at it and you're like, all right, well, where can that next step be? Now, another guy too that also I think a lot of people thought was going to be picked but wasn't is Keshad Johnson. Keshad Johnson is this is a very, very cool story. Now, listen, he wasn't drafted. I get all that, but he turned himself into a draftable player, and he was, besides just that, he was able to, show that he could shoot the 3-point shot. And I think a big thing with that is that what can you do? Can you be another 3-and-D guy? I mean, that's the term that everybody is using. And not only is everybody using, you just need to see, can you do that? And I think with Keshad, to me, I thought Keshad was a player that was going to be a little bit more draftable maybe than Pelle, because he's a little bit bigger, he's a little bit stronger, a little bit more athletic, and he was, and I think he certainly showed that he could do some of that stuff. Now we'll find that out. I think there's a chance that he sticks. Now, again, he wasn't drafted. He was a two-way. He's on a two-way contract, but I think there's a chance that he could stick because he is he tries really hard. He's a really good team player. All of his coaches have spoken very, very highly of him. So we'll see. But, I think a lot of people thought that he was going to be picked in that early to mid-second round. Obviously wasn't, and there's still obviously some concerns about his game and how he projects. Mainly, he doesn't really have any offensive skills at all. I mean, he doesn't. There's no ball handling. Obviously, he's not really good at driving to the basket. He is going to essentially be a dunker and a wide open 3-point shooter. But if he can keep everything. Or open, if he can keep you honest, then I think there's reason to believe that he can be that player. So we'll find out. But either way, going to the Miami Heat, I think it's a very, very interesting endeavor for both of them, and I think it's a really good fit. If Pelle went to a place like the Pelicans or the Hawks or something like that, I'm like, I don't know that those are great fits for him. He's going to a big time franchise that obviously needs to be able to get a little bit more talent in there. And if you bring in a little bit more talent, I think all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more interesting for you. So that's kind of where it's at with both of those guys. Both project kind of as those 3-and-D types. And, honestly, these weren't really viewed as NBA prospects before they got to Tommy Lloyd. So you got to give Tommy Lloyd a lot of credit on what he's been able to do with both of these players. And we'll see what happens with them. There certainly is a template going forward for being able to, see there being a role in the NBA. And with the Miami Heat, certainly a franchise that has had a lot of success. Now, we're going to talk about some other players on the roster that are raising some eyebrows, that have been shown by NBA circles, that have been, I think that you can say, are going to have a chance in next year's draft. But first, FanDuel. Now, if you're watching the NBA draft and you're like, man, I wish I could bet on some of this stuff, but I don't know where to go. FanDuel.com says, Locked On says, come over here, silly goose. And at FanDuel.com/LockedOn, all kinds of really, really good stuff. Here's the deal with FanDuel.com/LockedOn. You know that your money is good. You can bet in real time. You can bet before a game. You can bet futures. And like I said, the big thing is that you do know that your money is good. And that is a great thing about it, is that you know your money is good. And again, you can bet. It's fun. Check it out. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Now, let's talk about some of the players that are on the U of A roster now that you could see being NBA draft picks in the next year or two. And that first one to me is KJ Lewis. I love KJ Lewis. I was a little bit concerned that when KJ Lewis entered when he entered the NBA draft, I was a little bit concerned that, well, honestly, I did not want to see him do that because I was worried about a Dalen Terry situation where, you get drafted on your upside. Now, listen, he came back, and I think he is going to have a monster season. I think he's going to be all Big 12. I think he's going to be a player that everybody is kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, I got you. I see what you're about there. And I think that's going to be the case with him. He's a very, very good basketball player. He can attack the rim. He can his basketball IQ is fantastic. He's always around the ball, and those are things you can't really teach. And then athletically, he is fantastic, obviously. And so there's a lot to like about his potential at the next level, and I think you're going to see that. Honestly, I really think you're going to see that. I think with this team, that moving forward, there's got to be some things with that. There's got to be some things where you're like, all right, at what level can U of A get those next level NBA players? And because a lot of people think that that's kind of a prerequisite for winning a championship, I don't know that I totally agree with that, but I also don't know that that's a bad point either. I'm kind of on the fence about those points, but I certainly get the point that you need to have some next level talent. And I think next year's team has some next level talent to it. KJ Lewis, like I said, I view KJ Lewis as being an NBA starter. I think he's going to be in the league for quite a while. And I think that he's going to be able to be, somebody that you get him in there and he is, you can pencil him in as being a 10 to 12 year NBA player. I think he's got that. I also think that he's going to show some upside. I think that he's going to show some next level ability that you don't necessarily see a lot of times, from players that, that are ranked 90th in their class, whatever the case may be. That's kind of where that's at. Now, another one that I think is going to be interesting, and I think he's probably has the highest upside of anybody on the team, is Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant, love Carter Bryant, and I think it's impossible not to like Carter Bryant. I also think that he's probably going to be a 2-year player, and I am more than okay with that. With Carter, you watch him, you watch physically how he moves. He just looks like a basketball player. He looks like how a really good basketball player is supposed to be built, how they play. I mean, his passing is next level, and he just kind of gets it. You can tell that his basketball IQ, he got that obviously from his dad and his uncle, is very, very high level, and he's just good. Like I said, I don't know what else to say. He's just really, really good, and I think when you watch him, you're like, man, there's a next level that young man can get to. And I think you're going to see that as a sophomore. I think as a freshman, he's going to kind of, like I said, he's going to be kind of KJ Lewis plus, something like that, where you look at him and you're like, you look at him and you're like, okay, that's really, really good stuff. And I think with him, you also know that he is not going to go anywhere early when he is not ready. I think that's what's enticing about him. Like I said, I like it a lot. I think that he is going to be a really, really good player for the U of A. And just watching him, I think that, okay, game on. This is going to be some really good stuff for the U of A. And I think with that if he's here 2 years, he's going to be really, really good for Arizona. I'm excited to see what he can do. And not only am I excited to see what he can do, I think that he is going to be the player that you're like, all right, coming through, where is he as an NBA player? And I've always thought, and again, his dad doesn't like the comparison. I do not care on this one. I like the comparison. I see a lot of Jason Tatum in his game. Not saying he'll reach Jason Tatum, but moves kind of the same way, handles the ball the same way, and a good athlete, not a great athlete, really good feel, and just kind of moves in a way that just kind of has a calmness to him. I think he's an easy player to project as an NBA player. I also think that 24/7 missed the boat entirely with their rankings when it comes to Carter Bryant. I think that Carter Bryant, like I said, I believe when he leaves here, he is going to be a lottery pick. He is that good. He's got a great family behind him. They know what they're doing. And this year, I think he's going to be that 6th or 7th man. And then next year, I think next year he's going to be I think he's just going to be a monster. I think that's how good he's going to be. Excited to see exactly what he can do. But overall, Carter Bryant, yes, get ready because he's going to make an impact in a lot of different ways, and I think that he's an easy player to pencil in eventually as a first-round pick. Now, a player that is showing up on NBA draft boards that I did not necessarily see this early is Mount Crevis. Now, if you look at ESPN, they have Mount Crevis as a first-round pick. Now, listen, there's a lot to like about Mount Crevis. The first thing is that he has got – you can tell that basketball kind of comes naturally to him. That is that's something that you can't really teach. You either have that or you don't. And Mount Crevis has that. The big thing with him is he's just got to get stronger. Whenever he dribbled the ball last year and he put the ball on the floor, that ball went away, and that ball went away very quickly back the other way. You can't really have that if you're the U of A. you've got to be able to have a player who when he gets the ball, he can finish in traffic, maybe dunk it. That is something that U of A big men have not done a ton of, is dunk the basketball. I think that'd be the next step. You'd like to be able to see him dunk the ball. But other than that, like I said, really nice back to the basket game. He's legitimately 7'2", maybe even taller. So that, from a height perspective, he's really, really good. And you also know as well that his best basketball is definitely in front of him. But like I said, he's just got to continue to get stronger. If he continues to get stronger, I think that this is a player that's going to make a massive impact. I still view him as being somebody that's going to be in that 2026 draft. I think it's still a year. I think he's still probably a year away. I'm looking at somebody that's probably going to put up 10-6 next year, something like that, 10-6. And from there on out, then I think it's as a junior, I think he's going to be an All-American. But baby steps here. I don't think that he's going to take such a massive leap that he is going to be in the NBA in that time. I think it's going to still take him a little bit of time, but it's easy to see why an NBA team would be interested in him. It's too bad for him that he's come around kind of in the time period in which he has, because he would have been a surefire, no-brainer, top 15, top 20 pick, just because back in the day when you had the 7-foot plotting big man. But Krivas, I think, can also shoot the three. And I think we're going to see that Krivas can shoot the three. And we'll find out from there. But he's somebody, like I said, that's been showing up on NBA draft boards. And it's going to be fun to continue to see how this one all plays out. But I do think that U of A hit a home run with this. Now, the international recruiting has not been great under Tommy Lloyd, obviously, which is kind of an interesting situation. But overall, I think that it's fair to say that there's going to be a team, and this is going to be a player that is going to buck that trend. I don't think that there's a lot of Philly B, Conrad Martinez here. This is a player that's going to be an instant impact guy. And, you saw it last year when he got put in there. You knew immediately what he was going to be able to do. You could see his weaknesses, but you could also see that there were times when he's going to be able to help. He's going to have to take a big step forward now, because you're in the Big 12. You've got a team that needs you. And you got a team that needs you to be able to be kind of a difference maker. And I think that's where Arizona's at with him. They need him to be a difference maker. And honestly, there's no reason that he can't be a difference maker. That's kind of why that's kind of where I'm excited about all of this, is just being able to be that dude. And if he can be that dude, then I think that you're in pretty good spot. And I think the U of A will be in that spot. Now, something where you're also in a really good spot is LinkedIn. Check it out, LinkedIn, ladies and gentlemen. You will thank me later on LinkedIn. Now, listen, you know somebody that got a job through LinkedIn. I know somebody that got a job through LinkedIn. If you have your own business, you probably know somebody that got a job through LinkedIn as well. Check it out, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. LinkedIn, all kinds of really good stuff. And like I said, everybody goes through LinkedIn. I need to update my LinkedIn. I need it to be better because it is basically bare bones, and that's probably why I am doing this in my living room as opposed to being in a nice studio or something. But check it out, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. One of these ones too. Well, you will thank me later. All kinds of great stuff at LinkedIn. And again, there's a reason we talk about it. There's a reason that everybody uses it. Check it out. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk a little bit more about some players on this roster and possibly having some NBA prospects to their game. Now, Caleb Love. This is a guy that I believe can play in the NBA. And we will see if this is true or not. But the big thing with him is I think people know he can score, but he's just got the reputation is just kind of an erratic gunner. And I think the next step for him is to be able to get to the basket, like we talked about. I need him to be able to get 5 to 6 free throws per game. And I think if he gets 5 to 6 free throws per game, then Arizona is going to be in a lot better shape. He's got that ability. He's got that talent. when he just stands around the perimeter and shoot threes, I think that he limits himself, and I don't know that there's any reason why he should do that. I think that he is he's the kind of guy who, get him to the basket, get him downhill, and then you can really make some some plays happen. I think, well, watching him though, you also know that he's the dude that he is a how do I put this? He's a very talented player, and he is not only is he a talented player, he's somebody that you watch him and you're like, he looks like an NBA player from a talent perspective, and not only from a talent perspective. He looks at it like you're like, I could see him being on a roster and I could see him being that player, but he's got to take that next step. And if he can take that next step, then I think that you're watching a guy that can be that dude. So we will see. We will see. I do not close the door on him playing in the NBA. And I think that if he has the year, I think he can have where he's going to be, where he's going to be good, where he's going to be a little bit more efficient, maybe even getting his teammates a little bit involved. I can see him. I really don't. I really can't see him. And I think that he's going to be that dude. We'll find out. But like I said, I'm big on Caleb Love. I've always been big on Caleb Love, and I think that people need to, give him that chance. We'll see. But like I said, I think you're going to see an even better Caleb Love this year. And then one other one, Jaden Bradley. I like Jaden Bradley. I think Jaden Bradley is really, really good. Jaden Bradley can get downhill. And I think Jaden Bradley, just from a defensive perspective, is going to be able to play in the NBA. Why can't Jaden Bradley be Pat Beverly? Seriously, why can't Jaden Bradley be that guy? I think there's every opportunity for him. He's a little bit bigger. He's certainly a scrappy player. And I think offensively, he's going to show some people that he can do a lot more than you maybe thought otherwise. So we'll see how that works. But like I said, I think you're going to be looking at an all-conference type dude in a year or two. I hope he comes back. I hope that he makes I hope that he makes kind of that next step. And if he makes that next step, I think that he can be that dude. So we'll find out. But again, I'm excited about that. I think there's a lot of guys on this team that are going to hear their names called in 2025 and 2026. And I think you're going to see some first round picks in there, and that'll be nice. I mean, in Arizona, you like seeing first round picks. You like seeing players that develop in the capacity in which they can get into the NBA and be those guys that are difference makers. Because let's be honest, it's fun to watch our Wildcats in the NBA and to see them making a real impact. And I think you're going to see just that. Okay, now, next show, we are going to talk about instant impact contributors for U of A football. Which players are there that you're like, okay, I think in this 2024 and 25 class, they're going to come in and they're going to be able to play immediately because Arizona is going to need some of those dudes to be ready to rock and roll. And I think you're going to see quite a few of those players. So we're going to talk about that a great deal. But as always, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Again, wanted to break down the NBA draft. We're going to be talking about players that are going to be able to make instant impacts for the U of A football next season and the season after that. But have a great rest of your day. We will be back with you. You have been listening to Locked On Wildcats.